Welcome to News Nation, where right and left come to be reasonable. First, personal note, thank you very much for all the kind words about my brother. I didn't cover the mayoral election or even comment on it here at News Nation for obvious reasons. And my feelings about my brother and what he should do now, those are personal, not professional. So suffice it to say, I love and support my brother, and I'm not worried about him. Second, I get why many of you were surprised by the Democratic primary results in New York City. I was not. Two reasons. One is that it was a low turnout race that people did not think could go the way it did. The enthusiasm and turnout energy were overweighted for the more extreme candidates, as is often the case. And that's one of the problems with our binary system and with our closed primaries. And there were several radical choices in the mix. Not to mention, and contrary to what was sold by his opponents, Andrew's no establishment guy and the party was not loving that he ran. But that's his case to make, okay? The second reason I wasn't surprised is actually worth talking about here because it affects the entire nation. The Democratic Party is now officially in MAGA mode. We are now on both sides in a period of extremism. The same way MAGA played with the prejudices of white nationalism, you're seeing an identical dynamic on the left with prejudices like tacitly supporting extreme Islamism or targeting Jews. For the right, it's migrants. For the left, it's Jews. It's fundamentalist Christians dominating the right. It's fundamentalist Islamists making headway on the left. I know that doesn't sound like Democrats, but that party is dead. What it will be reborn as, we'll see. And this is not about Muslims, at least not for me. It's about extremism. Yes, Islam is growing in the country. In a few decades, the Muslim population is projected to double in size as a share of our overall population. I do not agree, however, with our president that Islam hates us. I don't care if you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, or any other faith, or if you think faith is for fools. It's how you use your beliefs to justify your actions that I care about. And what we're seeing now is that there are many in America who are adopting and adapting to fundamentalism. The outcome in this election wasn't about affordability or about real change. The winner is an open socialist, and the Democratic Party is now just that, socialistic. But be clear, this is a fictional fix for very real frustrations. An extreme suggestion of free everything that sounds great to those who feel cheated by the system because they are cheated by the system. But this is never going to happen. It makes sense that the left would want to match what beat them, if you think about it, a populist movement that's grounded in grievance. So now they're hatching their own kind of, if you can't beat them, join them move, fueled by what? Outrage against Trump. He is the devil. Legitimate disgust at income inequality, a lack of affordability, especially in big cities, and the obvious and skewed outcomes in our society. And there is truth to the outrage, just like there was on the MAGA side. It does seem that the system helps the top, that there are two sets of rules, that the gaps only get bigger, and that everything that has been promised in the past by the establishment has failed. That's why the establishment or old guard or system or institutions are all being targeted. And I'm okay with that, depending on what, if anything, follows that's better, okay? And by the way, this as a device in politics is not new, and it works. The French Revolution was led by screams of kill the rich, and that was 1789. And the influences then were Marxist and communist, just like they are on the left today. So I will borrow from the French for a word for what this is. It's a revolt. That's what it is, a rejection of how things are done in that party and in this country. But that's not all it is. Here's what we've learned, my observation. A populist movement these days needs something else, something extreme. Pod bros play to conspiracies. Trump played to type, white fright, danced with evangels who wanted religious indoctrination with the state. Christmas is back, right? He otherized minorities. Build the wall, they're sending rapists. They are eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Trans sports, the brown menace of migrants, bad hombres. So the left is now generating what I call its reaction formation to that, an equal opposite, a mirror image. What is that? It's an affinity for and appropriation of oppression of minorities. The same people that he targets, they champion. Islam hates us, we're for Islamists. Woke is not enough. Why? Too many are broke to focus on woke. Political correctness overcorrected. Canceling is passé, and certainly not extreme enough to match what they must muster to get a movement in the crowded, angry echo chamber. But to go full MAGA in the opposite direction, that seems to fit. And that's what we are living in this moment. Playing to how the poor are oppressed here and elsewhere has gotten traction, and it should. But that's why you see free everything. Anti-police, pro-Hamas, not even rejecting calls to globalize the intifada, outrage at ICE, embracing the anger of those rejected by MAGA. The latest, you see the violence, you see the murders. They're not angry jihadis, right? They're American men who have been disaffected and enraged and are now all too comfortable with an extreme reaction in advance of their policies, of politics. That's what it's about. That's extremism playing out in our ranks and being adopted by the left and the right fringe as well. But that's what it is, a battle of extremes. The latest, trying to make the regime in Iran a victim and insisting the bombing had to be a failure. Now, will this new iteration of the left work? I don't know. Trump certainly took the bait, right? He came at the winner here in New York City. That only helps them. And he didn't even mention Mayor Adams, who's supposed to be his guy, which is also telling about what the president values and is concerned about. So the better question is not if this movement will win an election or two, but whether it will create positive change. See, my big criticism of MAGA, and now it's what was the Democratic Party opposite, whatever they decide to call it, my problem is that they successfully take advantage of real angst, real pain, but they rarely deliver. We know many who signed up for MAGA, but they did not sign up for a lot that has come to pass. Groceries and gas and the economy and less foreign entanglements. None of that has worked out as promised, at least not yet. And I suspect we would see the same on the radical left. America will not go socialist or Islamist. Now, one good aspect with MAGA and the radical left and whatever they decide to call this movement, it's not for me to name it, we'll see. There should be change. The establishment should be attacked. But breaking disruption is easy and incomplete if there is not reformation or improvement. My pop always said, and he was a real Democrat, by the way. He was a real one. He didn't just piss off workers or minorities or underprivileged or target enemies, and make you angry. He was not a demagogue. He was a Democrat. He fought to make real changes that were reasonable, and he did. He used to say, any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a lot more to build one. And that's what's missing on the fringe of both sides. They do not have the ideas or the execution to make things better. They just talk the talk. Where is the work of real immigration reform in this administration? Yes, the border is closed down, laws are being enforced, but we need legislation, right? I've had the head of the CBP. I've had Tom Homan, the ICE czar, here. What do they want? Rule changes and resources that take legislation. Where are the deals? It's not a coincidence on the left either. Bernie and AOC are the faces of this new movement. Now, I respect the senator and I respect the representative's passion. And they have both done well getting famous, but they have never made any change. It is odd that people who are so desperate for better, and they should be, are so often deceived by those who promise everything and deliver nothing. If only getting things done sold as well as burning things down. 6 years in office for AOC, almost 20 for Bernie, and almost nothing to show for it in terms of delivering on what they say they want. And why is that? Because we are a capitalist country, not a socialistic one, and never will be. And the majority does not embrace extremism, at least not yet. And I say that because every day extremism floods our coverage, floods our social media culture. It was a big player in this election and in the last national one. The polls don't work anymore the way they used to. Social media is what drives turnout, and you can't measure it with a poll and samples the way they used to. Learn that lesson. Polls are just ways to advance narratives for the media. They are rarely predictive and certainly not more than a picture of a moment in time, all right? And we see it not just last night, but today in the reaction to the bombing in Iran. And I want to get after that. Why is there so much push from the left and the media to say they failed? Why ignore that a ceasefire came about as a result of them? How is that not success? Sure, it's fragile. Sure, it's tenuous, but it's better than it was before. And how could we not have made an impact on the enrichment operation? So today, sure enough, we get more proof that it wasn't a complete disaster. It didn't do nothing. And we know what it's about. And I'm not saying that the president doesn't ask for it, but a lot of this is an outgrowth of an insistence that if Trump did it, it's got to be attacked. And that gets us nowhere but worse, and a constant comparison of which side is worse. I say follow the facts when it comes to what the bombings did and did not do, not feelings about who's in office. So what do we know and what matters? The effectiveness of the strikes, let's talk to somebody, okay? I'm not going to go off a leaked Pentagon report that claims that they didn't totally destroy Iran's nuclear program. Who said totally destroy it? When was that the bar? It was about stopping them from getting one. Trump said today he's seen new intelligence that the sites were obliterated. Now, I think this was a mistake for him to say if he can't prove it, but here's what he said.
The document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not.
Well, but he does have to care that they don't try to restart the program. I mean, that's the whole point, right? So, because there is this push to say that Trump screwed it up, now you're going to see something that you don't usually take. Because if he's going to do one thing heavy and hard, it's defend himself. So the CIA releases a statement. They cite what they claim is a historically accurate source and method that confirms key Iranian nuclear facilities have been destroyed and would take years to rebuild. So what does that mean, and is that enough? I want to bring in somebody who knows. Former director of the CIA, former commander of the military's U.S. Central Command, General David Petraeus. It's good to see you, General. It's been a second.
Good to be back, Chris.
You are politically savvy as well. What do you make of this insistence that the bombings failed? And what do you look at for proof?
Well, frankly, I haven't seen people say the bombings fail. It's really a debate over how much damage was done. The DIA report apparently that was leaked was actually low confidence in what they actually said. So it should not have been given all that credence to begin with. I tend to think that the CIA statement, it aligns, frankly, with my own estimation, which is that severe damage was done to the program. And I think that's about where it should stay until you have the complete battle damage assessment done. And that takes time. There's no set limit for it. You could have a breakthrough. The CIA may have had access to something that enables them to make that statement with high confidence, which is what you really want to see. There are reports that the Israelis actually had some monitors and so forth. That may be the case as well. But you can't help but look at the photographs and realize that you have these punched holes in the mountainside. That's good, actually. That means that it did what it's supposed to, which is to go down into the mountain over time, hundreds of feet. Each one of those culminates its descent with explosion of 5,000 pounds of explosive. You do 12 of those, and it will have done enormous damage to any centrifuges that are in there. Just the sheer blast damage will be significant to these very sensitive instruments. And then if there is the highly enriched uranium in there, as was the case, I believe there were trucks outside there. Maybe some of it moved on. And these are questions that do need to be answered. But I think it's important to be a bit measured at this moment in time and just say we can clearly see that there was very substantial damage done to really all of the nuclear facilities, but especially the three that we followed up the Israeli damage with our submarine-launched cruise missiles and then these massive ordnance penetrators. And then we'll see. Bigger question is, was there any high-enriched uranium that was stored elsewhere or was taken out for these strikes? And are there centrifuges that are elsewhere as well? Certainly some were in the manufacturing process that may have been stored somewhere else, this kind of thing. That's what we need to determine. And when that's determined, either I think Iran will have to agree to dismantle its entire nuclear program, and I'd like to see that kind of agreement, and to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to go anywhere they want at any time they want to oversee the process and to verify and validate it, or Israel will bomb it again. And I think those that say, well, they only set it back a few years, if that's the case, in a few years, Israel will bomb again. I think people do not appreciate how significant 10-7 was for the Israelis in their strategic context. They will no longer allow a threat to be built on their borders or even in the region, the way they did tolerate that in the past with Hezbollah in Lebanon, with Hamas in Gaza, with other proxies elsewhere, and then especially with Iran at home. And I think that's the new reality of the Israeli defense strategy. And I'm quite confident that if, again, material is discovered elsewhere, and one would think, given the intelligent penetration that Mossad demonstrated in the early days of this operation in particular, which is so extraordinary, 12 days and not even a single plane shot down, much less a maintenance problem reported that forced a pilot to bail out. It's really quite extraordinary. Well, and our operation of 125 aircraft was very, very impressive as well.
I mean, obviously, you also have the collateral damage, and that's a very impersonal way to put it. You know, they didn't just kill the specific targets. There are a lot of citizens that were hurt as well. And I think that the most sympathetic actor in the entire equation are the people of Iran that are held hostage by that regime. I wanted to ask you one question that's kind of pseudo-political. There is a narrative now, a way of thinking, let's say, in America, that we don't get anything from the alliance with Israel, that they get everything. They get the Iron Dome. They get all of this leverage because they have the big gorilla of the United States standing behind them, but that all the money and all the support doesn't really benefit the United States and that it should change. What is your response to that notion?
Well, look at what they have done to Lebanese Hezbollah, which prevented any progress in Lebanon for a very long period of time. And that's very advantageous for the region in many, many ways. And of course, that region, what really matters, as always, even though we are now net exporters of crude oil and huge exporters of liquid natural gas, is the flow of oil and gas out to the countries that it actually fuels the global economy. They've dramatically reduced Iran's threat to the region. All of the countries were subject to various challenges from Iran over the years or from their proxies. Hamas, that job's not done by any means, but dramatically degraded, and they're not going to be able to be helped by Iran now. And then some of the other proxies that they have as well. These have been murderous. During the surge in Iraq alone, hundreds of our soldiers were killed by the explosively formed penetrators provided to the Shia militia in Iraq by Iran. So seeing Iran cut down in this way in their capabilities, I think, is very, very positive for a region that is very important to the world. Beyond that, there's the moral obligation, I think, that we should take and do take very seriously about a country that we helped bring into existence and repeatedly have come to the rescue of at various times when that was needed, the October 73 war in particular, but others as well. And again, we get a great deal in return when it comes to intelligence sharing, especially partnership in a variety of respects in that world. And then also our defense alliance is very important as well, a defense partnership.
General Petraeus, I appreciate your perspective as always. Thank you for being part of the conversation here on News Nation.
Good to be with you, Chris. Thanks.
All right, I'll see you again, General. Be well. 4 minutes and 35 seconds coming up. So Trump seemed to have successfully taken on the regime, at least for the moment. What does Bill O'Reilly thinks? What does he think matters in terms of assessing what happened here? And what does he make of the state of play in our politics? The big man, next. Let's bring in the big man, Bill O'Reilly. Good to have you. What is your take on the state of play in the analysis of what happened in Iran?
Well, CNN used 4 anonymous sources to try to diminish the bombing raid, what
Agreed.
they do. But even worse was the news outlets that picked it up as fact. So anonymous sources are easy. You can get anybody to say anything. And when I read the article, I said, how do these anonymous sources know? There's nobody on the ground there. There's nobody who went under the mountain to see. The Iranians can't even do that because the mountain may collapse on them. There's absolutely no primary source reporting on the damage that the American planes caused. None. So you got 4 anonymous people saying, well, I might have heard this, I might have heard that. It's absurd. No competent journalistic editor would have printed that article. But since CNN is in business to make Trump look bad, as you said, every moment of every day, they throw it out there. But I think we all know that the journalism industry in America and the world is at the lowest ebb. The lowest point in the history of that industry is right now.
I think that it's trying too hard to compete with these pod bros and people who sell hysteria for profit. And we should just stick to what we do best, because in truth, podcasts have their place, don't get me wrong. I love having one, but they don't have any of the assets or capabilities of getting things right, or reporting or investigating the way real news agencies do. We just too often get caught up in the propaganda game. The only thing I disagree with you on is, and of course, Trump asked for it by saying everything was obliterated, so he asks for the criticism because he doesn't know that either. But anonymous sources matter, Bill. If it weren't for anonymous sources in your career and mine, very often you wouldn't know anything about what's happening in the halls of power, because people aren't going to put their name to things because they get fired. So anonymous sources have their place. You just got to get it right.
I don't use them. And I've been pretty damn successful for 50 years in this business. I don't use them. Now, if I'm told something, I check it out another way. And you can always do that. If I had something vital, like there was going to be an explosion at this address tonight, and I had to get it out, I would tell people why I'm doing the anonymous source thing, if I had to do it. But I don't use them. I don't do a podcast. I do a broadcast. And you're absolutely right. The podcasters couldn't care less about what's true or what isn't. They just want people to watch them. They want attention. And that's what they do, and it's a huge industry. But I disagree with you about CNN. CNN knows better. They're so desperate to try to get some kind of surge of people to watch that they'll violate every
Well, they see what's happening on the left. And look, again, you and I disagree about CNN. Even though I got fired, I have a lot of respect for the men and women who are doing the job there, and I miss a lot of them. And I think it's a great place. But when they're wrong, they're wrong. When they do things they shouldn't, they shouldn't. I don't blame the whole place. You got to look at this specific platform. But they see what's happening on the left. You see that they're in MAGA mode, and they are all in on the mirror image of MAGA. That's what's going on there now. There are no more Democrats. There are no more Republicans. There's MAGA, and now you have whatever they call the new lefty MAGA. I don't know what it's going to be called.
Look, all I want is for every news agency to try to be fair and accurate in its reporting. Is that too much to ask, Cuomo?
No,
it's just too much.
It's just too much to ask if they want to be successful, because there is very little percentage in fairness. People want fealty. They want outcomes. They want comfort. They want reassurance.
I'm sorry. I'm making millions of dollars, Cuomo, being fair and accurate. That's what I'm selling. Okay, so you're wrong, and I got the receipts.
You
to
see
prove it.
yourself as a fair broker.
People are hungry.
But they,
And I am.
But
And you're going to challenge that. You better have a backup.
No, but please, look, because if I say it otherwise, it can't be true. I think that you have a tendency
you got to back it up
to defend the administration and conservatives and attack liberals and Democrats. I think that you do more of that
That's
than
your
you do of
opinion.
that.
But if you watch, which you don't, every day, you would see that isn't true. I'm going after a Republican in charge of the ethics committee in the House now. I don't care about ideology. I don't care about party. It's the last thing on my mind. And as far as Trump is concerned, I'm fair to Trump. And I'm accurate about Trump. And I tell you what is going on. I have not been wrong on this program. I've told you exactly what's going on.
Well, you didn't. You thought that he was going to be patient and wait on Iran, and then it happened the next day. So I mean,
well, it was a timing. It was a timing issue.
But it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about that.
And that was a mistake. But
stuff.
it wasn't a mistake about trying to make Trump look good. It was a timing issue. But anyway, look, what we are doing at News Nation is trying to do accurate reporting without this insane injection of partisan ideology. I think you would agree with that.
But that's all. I mean, you'll get fired otherwise. I mean, News Nation has a very specific code of conduct of what it wants to do, which I also think is emblematic of the difference between this and digital media, is that I have bosses who watch and listen, and if you don't do it the way they want it done, which is be fair to both sides when called for, you got a problem. Podcasts don't have that.
Look, you're fading out a little, so wake the audio guy up, jack his audio up.
Technical stuff is not our strong point here. We kind of just, we focus on the content, not the production.
The guy just woke up because I scolded him. If you're right about News Nation, and you are, then why they hire me if I'm such a partisan right-wing guy?
Balance.
Come on. No balance. Then you'd have to have a kooky, the only left-wing zealot you have on a consistent basis is Carville. And it's okay with me, I don't care. But look, your producer wanted me to talk about Putin a little bit, because this is the next step in foreign policy, and I think it's important. So my book, Confronting Evil, comes out on September 9th. And I'm extraordinarily lucky because I have the Ayatollah and Putin on the cover, along with Mao and Hitler, and then we have 8 other villains inside the book. We researched Putin. We investigated Putin. Putin is a true psychopath. He is a psychopath. But he's different than the mullahs, and this is what people need to understand, because he's driving Trump crazy. Putin's driving Trump nuts. I don't know if President Trump understands what a psychopath this man is. And when you see how he was raised, when you see where he came from and how he assembled power, there is no doubt of what I'm saying is accurate. So Putin, unlike the mullahs, is not a coward. The mullahs are cowards, okay? They pay people to kill babies and women. That's what the mullahs are. They're despicable cowards. Putin isn't a coward, and you'll see that in the book. Putin is right in your face, and he is going to wreak as much destruction on the world as he can until somebody puts him in the grave. That's him. And Trump can't get through. Trump has offered him a really good deal, but Putin doesn't want the deal because Putin doesn't see that as helping his psychopathic yearnings. He wants to kill more people, all right? Now, how do you deal with a guy like that? You can't attack him because he has nukes, but you can strangle him economically, and I mean all the world banks, you don't do business with Moscow. Any bank that does, wiped off the face as far as sanctions are concerned. That's how you get him. And I had this conversation with Donald Trump. I said, you can sanction him all day long. He doesn't care about his people. If they're eating grass, he doesn't care, okay? But if you strangle, all right, the banks, and he can't get his oil money moved and he can't get anything in, he'll make the deal. And I stand by that.
No, I think that's a sound analysis if you can get the banks to go along with it. We'll see. I mean, if there's one thing that's held consistent is that people keep doing what they need to do for their own benefit, regardless of what it means geopolitically.
Trump is pretty damn powerful now. If you watch the NATO thing, he got all those NATO countries to kick 5% into defense when they were at 2%, except for Spain. And here's a little message for you, Spain. I'm not going there. I'm not going to Spain. I don't go to Mexico either, okay? And I'm eliminating all the Spanish-speaking countries, and I speak a little Spanish, un poco.
Un
okay?
poquito
But
español.
Spain is obnoxious. You're obnoxious, Spain, all right? Pony up. We protected your butt for decades. We, America. Pony up. I know you don't care about Ukraine. I know you don't care about anything other than having dinner at 10 in the evening. I know that. But you better pony up.
Bill O'Reilly, thank you very much for making your witness. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Those were the opinions of Bill O'Reilly. Yo te quiero, España. Yo te quiero. Today, Attorney General Pam Bondi issued a stern warning. She doesn't think there are Iranian regime sleeper cells here. She says she knows there are. Okay, that's not new. But I think that we have to start talking about what is new. That it's not homegrown terror, meaning Islamists in our midst. It's young men primarily who are disaffected, pissed off about inequality, pissed off about their lives, and open to fundamentalism. One of the leading counter-terror experts in the country, who he thinks we got to be most afraid of. Today, AG Bondi was telling the Senate, sleeper cells from Iran, real deal.
Back to Iran, they have sleeper cells, we think, here?
We have thus far arrested 1,500 illegal Iranians in our country. That is something that I would like to talk about in a classified setting.
So
but yes, have they invaded our country?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't even know what that means. Just because you're here illegally doesn't mean that you're a terrorist, okay? But I also think it's a distraction. I don't think the big enemy is what we remember after 9/11. I think we are in a different phase of extremism here, where we have rank and file Americans who are angry, disaffected, and susceptible to all of the angry, extreme talk that's going on. And that's what we see in the recent spate of violence. They're not jihadis yelling about Allah. They're yelling about wanting to destroy America, and they're American. Let's bring in former FBI and CIA counterterror official and expert, Mr. Phil Mudd. Good to see you, brother.
Thank you.
Who are you worried about and why?
I would worry about Islamic extremists, and I don't believe there are many, if any, Iranian sleeper cells here. I would worry about domestic political violence conducted by people who look like you and me. And as a practitioner, I can give you evidence why. Number one, there's 330 million Americans. How many of them are energized left and right by Democrats and Republicans by what they see happening in Congress versus how many might be energized by Iran? There's tens of millions of people in this country who are angry about politics. Number two, evidence. How many times do you see political acts in this country, acts of violence committed by Middle Easterners versus people who are angry at a governor, at a mayor, at the U.S. Congress? And number three, you mentioned something really important that we forget, and that is messaging. The messaging from the left and the right here is sometimes verging on violent. That gives younger people, especially who are emotional, an opportunity cover to say, I want to go and do something about it. I'd worry about Americans who look like you and me, who are energized by politics, Chris, and I think the evidence backs that up.
The suggestion that it's getting worse here at home, the evidence of the Republican Party yielding to MAGA, which is without question fringe in its rhetoric, if not in its deliverables. And now we see no more Democratic Party. They have their own mirror image of MAGA that embraces a lot of fundamentalism, or at least gives excuses for it. What does that mean in the picture?
This is huge. This is underreported. And if I were in your shoes, which I hope never to be, if I were in your shoes, I'd talk about it more. Let me tell you why from my old life. Do you hear much more about ISIS? Do you hear much more about Al-Qaeda? That is not just an operational result. That is partly because the messaging from places like Syria and Iraq from ISIS, the messaging from places like Afghanistan from Al-Qaeda doesn't exist. So a 17-year-old who wants to learn about ISIS or Al-Qaeda has to look on YouTube. If you want to see someone pushing, I wouldn't say violence, but getting pretty close to pushing to violence about right-wing and left-wing politics in this country, look to Congress. So messaging, I'm saying, is critical, whether it's the people I followed overseas, Islamic extremists, or whether it's extremists in this country. And the messaging in this country is far worse than it used to be, Chris.
I mean, look, what is the main target of both fringes now? Destroy the system. Destroy the elites, destroy the establishment. And it's not that far off from something way back in 1789 called the French Revolution. Kill the rich. We are not that far from that right now.
People in this country do not realize what we have because they don't travel, and let me be blunt and get rude, they don't have passports. If you travel in the world I lived in, which was mostly the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, for 25 years, the line between autocracy, violence, and democracy is very thin. People here talk about the opposition party like they're the enemy because they don't recognize when you say they're the enemy, the Democrats are the enemy or the Republicans, there might be 1/10 of 1% of your followers who say, I'm going after the mayor, I'm going after the governor, I'm going after Congress. It's a numbers game in the world I lived in, and 1/10 of 1% of the American population, if they are radicalized toward violence, is a lot of people, Chris. You can't follow that many people with the FBI.
Phil Mudd, I appreciate you. Thank you for perspective. It is amazing. As well-traveled as you are still so profoundly unsophisticated. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Up next, the people who matter most. You do. He's a friend of mine. I've took him fishing. He didn't help clean up. Have your say. 844-968-7720. Let's get after it. All right, Dusty, who do you got? I'm looking for a picture of Phil Mudd fishing. Who do you got?
Okay, while you look, we'll get David from Tamaqua, Pennsylvania on the line. He's listening to you, David. Go ahead.
What's your question, David?
Hi, Mr. Cuomo. Don't you believe that the socialists winning the Democratic primary for a mayor already started lying about things with all this free stuff and all the things he believes in that would separate our country even worse? And don't you believe that all the Democratic Party needs to meet and listen to Democratic Senator John Fetterman to learn what to do in this country and reunite us all and get things fixed?
I'll take the other side. No, because it doesn't work. And if you want to get elected, you've got to be extreme. And you have to pick an enemy. You've got to pick a boogeyman. You've got to overpromise. You've got to say you're going to break everything. You're going to change everything. You've got to be radical. Why? Because people are disgusted. And they're sick of incrementalism. And they're sick of the status quo and what they've already been told. And everything seems to be getting worse in their perspective. And when you have extreme hardship, you want extreme solutions. So I get why he's selling what he's selling. And again, he is part of the mirror image of MAGA. They do the same things that they say they oppose. Why? Because it works. Because it beat them, all right? And I am not surprised by anything I'm seeing. Next.
Matt from Los Angeles.
Matt, what's your question?
Hey, Chris. Do the Democrats come back from this with governors like Josh Shapiro and Wesley Moore, or do the Republicans now take the centrists with their future looking like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio?
That's a good question. Now, I have been saying that post-Trump, MAGA is going to have their own reaction formation. MAGA is going to be gone, though you'll never hear it again. And they are going to now be reacting to the radicalism on the left. And they're going to be heavy anti-Islamist. Instead of the brown menace being migrants, it's going to be Muslims, and it's going to be fundamentalists, and it's going to be crazy lefties, and they're going to go back to character counts and Christian conservatism and all these other things they had to abandon because Trump didn't fit the mold. But now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. But I do know this in politics. Unless it's a really transcendent figure, moment develops the man. Man meets the moment. The moment is not generated by the man unless you have a transcendent figure. And I don't see anybody out there as transcendent. I think there's some good people on the left. I just think they have no home. And I think they have a big problem. Next.
Let's end on a positive note with Mr. Positive.
Oh, Mr. Positive. Love texting with you. How you doing, big boy?
Oh, my God. Fantastic, Chris. Boom shakalaka. Everybody go for your dreams. Chris, Does the media play a significant role in the escalation of extremism?
Yes, because it works. Because we are jealous and envious and competitive with not just one another, but now with the digital media, which has had a great run in the democratization of media process by destroying us and saying we can't be trusted, don't listen to us, only listen to them. So now you have comics posing as commentators about Middle East policy when they've read a book. And just by playing with conspiracies, attacking everything, being insulting, but they don't have insights, they don't have solutions, they don't have accountability, they don't have any accuracy, and then what do they fall back on? I'm just a comic. I'm just a podcaster. It's just an opinion. So that's why the media has been trying, just like we're seeing with the Democratic Party, disappearing into a mirror image of MAGA, because that's what beat them. You see that in the media. You don't see it at News Nation because we're fighting the good fight here. We believe in it. And if we're going to have a smaller audience, fine, but it's going to be the right audience. It's going to be centrists. It's going to be people who are reasonable, not looking right and left, but looking forward. I'm okay with that trade. A lot in the media aren't, and they want as many people as they can get. And when you're doing that, you're going to do it the wrong way. All right?
All right.
We'll be right back. First, here's Phil Mudd, all right, with a fluke that I put him on, all right? And here he is when I was cleaning. And he was in much better shape then, by the way, okay? He doesn't look anything like that now. So he had a New Day hat on. That was the morning show I started at CNN. We beat Morning Joe twice, only time they've ever done it. Anyway, please stop telling me that Muslims are the problem. If you look at the celebration party for the guy who beat my brother last night, there were more white people there than anything else, and they're young, and they're angry, and they're disaffected, and some are appropriating the oppression of people that they identify with but they don't resemble, and others are just pissed off about how everything is, and they want it destroyed, just like the MAGA people. This is the mirror image, okay? And they are embracing the people that were rejected by MAGA. Will it work? We'll see. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.